Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Chana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakracharya Asasara Sata Sri Sri Mata's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaur Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service, Text 36. Etad, bhagavato, rūpam, brahmaṇaḥ, paramātmanaḥ, param, pradhānam, puruṣam, daivam, karma-viceṣṭitam, etad bhagavato rūpam, Brahman Paramātmanaḥ, param pradhānam puruṣam, daivam karma-viceṣṭitam, etad bhagavato rūpam, Brahman Paramātmanaḥ, param pradhānam puruṣam, daivam karma-viceṣṭitam, etad bhagavato rūpam, Brahman Paramātmanaḥ, param pradhānam puruṣam, daivam karma-viceṣṭitam. Daiva karma-viceṣṭitam, etad bhagavato rūpam, Brahman Paramātmanaḥ, param pradhānam puruṣam, daivam karma-viceṣṭitam, etad bhagavato rūpam, Brahman Paramātmanaḥ, puruṣam, parama-ātmanaḥ, etad bhagavato rūpam, brahmaṇaḥ paramātmanaḥ, pradhānam puruṣam, karma-viceṣṭitam. Vaishnavis. Etad bhagavato rūpam, Brahman and Paramātmā, puruṣam, etad, this, bhagavatāḥ, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rūpam, form, brahmaṇaḥ, of Brahman, parama-ātmanaḥ, paramatma, param, transcendental, pradhānam, chief, puruṣam, personality, daivam, spiritual, karma-viceṣṭitam, whose activities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. This puruṣam, who the individual soul must approach, is the personal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Brahman and Paramātmā. He is the transcendental chief personality, and his activities are all spiritual. Purport. In order to distinguish the personality whom the individual soul must approach, it is described herein that the puruṣa, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the chief amongst all living entities and is the ultimate form of the impersonal Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation. Since he is the origin of the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation, he is described herewith as the chief personality. It is confirmed in the Kaṭha Upaniṣad, Nityo Nityanam. There are many eternal living entities, but he is the chief maintainer. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā also, where Lord Kṛṣṇa says, Aham sarvasya prabhava. I am the origin of everything, including the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation. His activities are transcendental, as confirmed in Bhagavad-gītā. Janma karma chame daivaṁ. The activities and the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are transcendental. They are not meant to be considered material. Anyone who knows this fact, that the appearance, disappearance, and activities of the Lord are beyond material activities or material conception, is liberated. Yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma. Such a person, after quitting his body, does not come back again to this material world, but goes to the Supreme Person. It is confirmed here, puruṣa puruṣam vraje. The living entity goes to the Supreme Personality simply by understanding the transcendental nature, his transcendental nature and activities. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. So, in this verse and purport, we're getting another version of a Shastric statement. Vedanti tattvavitas tattvam yajganam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. Those who are knowers of the truth understand that there's one absolute truth, one tattva, but it's manifested in three forms. There's the Brahman effulgence, there's the Paramatma or super soul manifestation, and then there's Bhagavan, the original personality of Godhead. Krishna says, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the source of that Brahman effulgence. And he goes on to say, Sarvasi chaham hridisani vishto. I am situated in the hearts of all living entities as the super soul. So the original personality of Godhead is a specific individual, a person as we are. But as mentioned in this purport, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vididati Kaman. Yes, there are many individual, eternal, conscious, living entities, living beings. And Krishna is among them, but he's different in the sense that he is the source and the maintainer of them all. We may be eternal, but we're not capable of maintaining all living entities in the spiritual and material worlds. So there's one Supreme Personality of Godhead to whom we're meant to understand that and exist in our constitutional position of servant. So those three basic manifestations of the personality of Godhead, Brahman, Paramātmā, and Bhagavan, are mentioned here. But if we look in Bhagavad-gītā, we see it's actually a complete science of God, from the position of atheism that's described in the Bhagavad-gītā, those who think asatyam apratishtam te jagat ahur anishvaram. There are those who don't see God. They're the atheists. And then there are those who see God in the form of just one effulgence. Everything is one, they say. But if that's possible, but that's not really possible, because they are individuals saying that. They just imagine everything can be one. And it's stated in the Shastras that it's simply an imagination that you can exist in total oneness, and eventually you come back down, because personality has to be expressed. So in the Vedic philosophy, yes, there is oneness, but there's simultaneously also duality, in the sense that in order for there to be a relationship between the soul and the Supreme Soul, there has to be oneness and difference. So in Bhagavad-gītā we find the concept of God as Father. Aham bija pradhāpitaha, Krishna says. And some people, they have that conception also in other spiritual paths, that yes, there is some Supreme Father. And in the spiritual world, there's a place for people who want to see God as the Supreme Ruler, the Supreme Father, in awe and reverence. Yeah, those are the Vaikuntha planets. So that's described in Bhagavad-gītā. Then there's some people, they want to see God as nature. So that aspect is also there. There's the universal form, which Krishna revealed to Arjuna. And then there are descriptions of how God can be seen in nature. I am the taste of water, I am the light of the sun and moon. Of aquatics, I am the shark. Of mountains, I am the Himalayas. Of the rivers, I am the Ganges. So there's so many ways to see God in nature. But God exists apart from nature as well, although he's present in nature in the universal form. You know, sometimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam it's recommended for people who are in the material world and have a hard time understanding the personality of Godhead. They can, in order to approach the personal view, they're asked to see the mountains as the bones of the universal form, the rivers as the veins, the sun and moon as the eyes, the forest as the hairs on the body, the plants. So that vision is also there. And God is the ultimate source of everything is there as well. But all these things are explained to Arjuna, like when Arjuna was seeing the universal form of the Lord, it became too much for him, and he wanted to see him in his personal form. So then Krishna manifested his four-armed Narayan form, and that was there. But then that is a form of the Lord that is worshipped again in this mood of awe and reverence, which is a genuine relationship with God, to appreciate God in that way. And many people attempt to see God like that. But Arjuna wasn't satisfied. He wanted to see, let me see you in your beautiful original two-arm form of Krishna. So he saw that too. So the Bhagavad-gītā presents a whole science of God, all different levels of God realization. And that is being mentioned here. So it's important to understand who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. And this is one of the things that attracted me to the Krishna consciousness movement. I was raised among people who talked about God, but they had no real picture of who God actually is. God is the name of a position, but there's a person who occupies that position, and we should understand who that is, what his name is, what he looks like, what are his activities, how does he appear in this world. Like Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, Janma karma chime divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjuna. That if one simply understands these things, the transcendental nature of the appearance and disappearance and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is liberated. So there's an interesting episode in the Srimad Bhagavatam where the importance of understanding the identity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is stressed. The activities of Atri Muni and his wife Anasuya. They were ordered by Lord Brahma to generate progeny. In other words, they were asked to take on the role of Prajapatis. You know, the bodies of living things and the different generations of human-like beings and demigods, they're all generated by a process of reproduction. In one sense, it's like the theory of evolution, but inverse. You know, the supporters of the Darwinian theory of evolution think that originally there's one being from whom we all come, a single-celled creature that this happened before evolution, because for evolution to happen there has to be reproduction, and in the course of that reproduction there's modification of the form. So they think the original form, that it was produced outside of evolution, was some single-celled being, and they propose that the single-celled organism started reproducing by an asexual process, just by dividing. And then somehow or other, the single-celled creatures, they say, started clumping together to form multicellular organisms. Like the human body is made up of trillions of cells. But it all started from a single cell, fertilized egg. So it's a complicated process. So, and they think that all happened without any guiding intelligence. It just happened by chance, basically. But in the Vedic cosmology, we have an idea that in many ways is similar. Yes, there was one original being from whom all other types of life forms came, and that living being was produced by a process other than sexual reproduction. It's like Brahma coming from the lotus flower, from Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And then he manifested his mental sons by an asexual process. And then he produced the first sexual male-female pair, Swayambhuva Manu and his consort Shatarupa, and they had sons and daughters, and the daughters were given to the sages, and by their reproductive activity they generated the different forms of life. You know, so there's reproduction with modification, but it's intelligently guided and planned. And in that way it's more perfect than, you know, the Darwinian theory of evolution. They really haven't explained how that first living entity comes about. Neither have they explained how just by material processes, DNA and chemicals combining and mutating, that you can get something like a human being or any type of living entity. But in any case, the point is that Atri and Anasuya were asked to generate population, become Prajapatis. So they went out to perform austerities, tapasya. So they went to a very beautiful place, the Riksha mountain, and there was a river there, and gardens and forests with trees producing flowers and fruits, beautiful fruits. There's a river with a waterfall. And so Atri decided to engage in a very severe practice. He stood on one leg for 100 years and ate the only thing that he ate, really, not even really ate, he just existed on breathing air. So after a while, he had this desire, if I'm going to reproduce, if I'm going to have children, I want one of them, a son, to be just like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Jagat Ishvara. So he prayed to Jagat Ishvara, the controller of the universe, to have a son like him. So he kept on meditating and meditating like that, and finally he produced this yogic flame, blazing fire-like flame that attracted the attention of the entire universe. So 3 personalities arrived at his hermitage in the forest, and they were Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. Vishnu came on Garuda, Shiva came on his bull, Brahma came on his swan. So Atri was just amazed. Who are these 3 brilliant personalities who arrived here? And he said, I was praying to the Jagadishvara, so I was expecting just one person. He didn't know these things that are being mentioned here. Who's the Supreme Personality of Godhead? He just knew there was someone who had that position, and he was praying to it. So he said, I was asking for the Jagadishvara, and 3 of you guys show up. Who's the Jagadishvara? And another interesting detail, as I said, he was standing on one leg. So when they appeared, he kind of hopped over on one leg, to inquire. So he inquired. So 3 of you guys show up. Which one is the Jagadishvara? And they said, the three spoke simultaneously, said, we are the Supreme, we are the Jagadishvara. And, it's explained in the Bhagavatam what is meant by that. There's Vishnu, who is ultimately the Jagadishvara, but for maintaining the material universe, he appears as the guna avatars. So they're all considered Ishvaras, because Brahma, he controls the universe by manifesting all the different planetary systems, the lokas, for the jivas, the living entities to inhabit. And he also manifests the forms, the bodily forms that they will occupy. So in that sense, he's Ishvara. Vishnu, of course, maintains the entire thing, keeps it in existence for as long as he wants. And in that sense, he's the Ishvara, the controller. And Shiva, he brings the whole thing to a close. He unmanifests it. So in that sense, he's the Jagat Ishvara. So, of course, ultimately, there's a difference between Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma. Krishna has different forms. His Svamsha forms and his Vibhinamsha forms. His forms that are of equal power. Of course, ultimately, there's Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he can manifest himself in his Narayan forms, in his pastime, Leela avatars, like Lord Nrsimhadev, Matsya, Kurma, so many. They have the same power. Vishnu form is also like that. Has not the complete powers, but there are some things that only Krishna can manifest. But so Lord Brahma is usually a jiva who is empowered by Vishnu, Krishna, Narayan to manifest the planetary systems and bodies for the conditioned souls. And Shiva, he's a transformation of Krishna, like yogurt is milk. It's a transformation of milk, but you can't switch it back to milk once it's yogurt. So Vishnu is the ultimate personality of Godhead. So they said, well, we heard your prayer, we're the Jagat Ishvaras, so we're going to give you sons who are partial manifestations of us. So he got 3 sons with his wife Anasuya, Dattatreya, who represents Vishnu, Soma, who represents Brahma, and Durvasa Muni, who represents Shiva. And the lesson was, because he didn't know the identity and name of the actual Jagat Ishvara, Krishna, in other words, he should have been like Yashoda and Nanda and Vasudeva and Devaki in their past lives, where they actually prayed to have Krishna appear as their son, and they got that benediction. But because he just called on the Jagat Ishvara, he didn't realize who the actual Jagat Ishvara is. He got these other sons. So it's important to have this confidential information, which we've been given by the grace of Lord Chaitanya coming down through the disciplic succession to us from Srila Prabhupada. He gave that knowledge. He gave the Krishna book, which showed the identity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He gave Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad-gītā, Srimad Bhagavatam, the literary incarnation of Krishna, so that we have this important information. So I'll stop there. Is there any questions, comments, Prabhupada?
Thank you, Drutakarma Prabhu, for a very interesting class. In the latter part of your class, you mentioned a few times that Atri Muni, he didn't know who the Jagadishvara was. But despite the fact that he didn't know who the Jagadishvara was, something happened. Because he was like I don't know how to say, a standard Vedic person. I mean, he had some adhikar, some austerity, he performed the penances, and they showed up, okay? Now, but in this age, we know, as you just mentioned right at the end of your class, Prabhupada's given us Krishna book. Prabhupada gave us, the teachings of Krishna. But does that qualify us? Because in the purport, a few times, Prabhupada quoted Janma Karma Chame Divyam, and in many, many lectures, many, many places, Prabhupada would quote that verse, and he would just give a straight translation of that. Somebody who understands the, the transcendental nature of Krishna, at the end of this lifetime, they go back to Godhead. So, are we qualified? In other words, we're practicing devotees. What about somebody who's not even a practicing devotee and just picks up the book and they read it and they're not stupid and they can understand, oh yeah, Krishna doesn't have a material body, he's got a spiritual body, so his pastimes are transcendental. I mean, have they understood the transcendental nature of Krishna? What's the actual qualification? Who goes home on the basis of that statement of, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Viditattvataha? Because, information is one thing, but you have to be a pure devotee? Do you have to have a certain amount of realization about it? Or how does it work exactly? Because I never really can't think of an instance where Prabhupada elaborated upon that particular point. The question's clear, right?
Who knows it completely. And bhaktya mam abhijananti. So to get complete knowledge of Krishna, that includes bhakti, devotion. And that's what we've been hearing in this whole chapter and this whole episode. That is the culmination of it. If one wants to be, invited into Krishna's pastimes, then one has to completely understand, not just jnana, but vijnana. You have to understand the practice, of devotional service. So, ye yatamam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamiham, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So, I think that's basically the answer to your question was in your question. How does one become qualified? It's like if you're offered the opportunity to enter a school, if you're offered that opportunity, but then you don't take it upon yourself to not only educate yourself theoretically, but learn a skill or be able to apply the knowledge, then you don't get the result. Of course, you get some result. Krishna says in Bhagavad-gītā, even if one makes a little effort, it's not lost. So it may take some longer than others to realize things, but everyone is qualified who takes up the offer. It's like Srila Prabhupada said about initiation. It means it's the beginning. And, we've been discussing, you and I, about, the green mango. It's a mango, but it's not ripe yet. So You may give everyone the mango, but they have to ripen it. Anything else? Oh, okay.
Thank you very much for that answer. I would like to support your answer by giving some quotes from Prabhupada. In the second chapter, last verse, 72, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, you can become Krishna conscious in a second, or it may take millions of births. It's only a question of understanding and accepting the fact. And then further on that verse, 4.9 from Bhagavad-gītā, on the lecture on that verse, Srila Prabhupada said, even if you don't understand, if you try to understand. So we have not only, we have the scriptures, we have Prabhupada's concessions for us. He's very kind, and he gives us, he said, just try to understand. As you said, we go to the school and then we have to try. So those are some supporting quotes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the nice class, Prabhu. So just a comment. It's in the same line of Bhagavad Prabhu's question. So whatever we understand in this material world is based on our, mind, which is matter, and anything we learn through comparison. We only learn something which we experience. Something which we don't experience, how can you understand that, right? That is some common sense. So even though we accept, pratyaksha pramana, anumana pramana, and shabda pramana, even shabda pramana, the things which we don't experience, still we understand by comparing with something we experienced it. Like suppose, let's say I want to understand pancake. I never saw pancake in my life, but I can understand pancake by comparing it to dosha. I can think that, it's like a dosha, it is salty, but it is sweet. Still, even though you don't experience it, we are understanding it through something which we already experienced. So now coming to Krishna's pastimes, they are transcendental, so which we don't have experience. Still, the only way we understand those things is by still again comparing things which we already experience in this material world. Like we say Krishna's love. How do you understand Krishna's love? We compare with something in this material love, think that, something like this, but not exactly, but something like this, right? So, but again, now the question is that for me to understand transcendental things, do I have to understand material things so that I can compare? But not necessarily. If you see Sukadeva Goswami, actually he was Brahman realized. He didn't experience anything in this material world, but he was completely purified. He's Brahman platform. He's beyond any material experience or contamination. But he still understood Bhagavatam, even though he did not experience anything material. So I think that is where the question of bhakti comes in. As Prabhu actually you mentioned in your response, the devotion plays in. Because in the 34th verse, Prabhupada mentioned that one can become Brahman realized by theoretical understanding. But to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should understand His name, forms and pastimes. So first, the qualification is that one has to be purified of all material contamination things, and then only we can actually understand the transcendental pastimes. Because till then we understand, but it is still just, our understanding is just comparing to some mundane material objects. So there is no real transformation happening. So that is why both things has to happen simultaneously. One is that one has to be cleansed of all the material impurities, and then by the process of bhakti yoga, by adding devotion, then that one qualifies to be, one becomes eligible to understand the transcendental pastimes. I don't know if I'm...
Yeah. And one also needs Krishna's mercy.
Yeah.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.